problems effectively. May we always recognise each other's values and opinions, be fair-minded and ready to listen to each other's point of view. In our dealings with each other, let us always be open to the truth of others and ready to seek agreement, slow to take offence and always be prepared to forgive. May we always work to enhance the wellbeing of Selwyn District and its communities. We will. And the karakia, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, ki mā kina ki uta, ki mā tara ki tai, e hi akia nā te atakura, e hio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei, mauri ora. Please take a seat. So we have an apology from Councillor Lyle, who is at a close friend's, family friend's funeral this afternoon, and other than that we're all here, but if someone please move for the acceptance of that. Councillor Alexander and Lemon. All those in favour please say aye. Against, declare it carried. I've had no identification of any extraordinary general business today. None. Any conflicts of interest that anyone would like to raise now? Yes, Councillor Jenny Gallagher. Kiwi Reserve, Jenny. And Councillor Epeha.
It's also the conflict of interest later on in the agenda with Weybridge North Wakai. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the nature of that conflict, Shane, will mean that you don't take part in the discussion and sit back from the table and won't be a part of any vote. And Jenny, I'm not sure the nature of your conflict with Kiwi Reserve.
Only because I'm a neighbour that's been identified, names in the agenda as being a property holder close by.
Great. So again, you're thinking your participation will be nil on that item? Great. And Councillor Hassan?
And mine's just the standard with regards to the liquor licensing.
Great, thank you. Item number 1 is the meeting, the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Selwyn District Council held in the council chambers here on the 10th of June. Someone happy to move that they're true and accurate record? Councillor Mugford and McInnes. Any discussion on those minutes or matters arising that aren't captured anywhere else? There being none, all those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Item number 2 is the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Audit and Risk Subcommittee held on the 10th of June. That we receive those minutes. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Lemon and Reid. Is there any discussion on those minutes or any matters arising? All those in favour say aye. Yes, Councillor Lemon.
Sorry, I'm not sure whether it was in those minutes or not, and it's dealt with later, but just for the benefit of the meeting, that note that when we went into PX, I declared a conflict and left the room regarding water services. Sorry, this was in the previous item.
All right.
Yeah, it's mentioned in the PX, but and we're moving those minutes into the general, but it's not noted. And sorry, as I should have said to you earlier, just that I did actually leave the room
For that discussion.
Yeah,
Yes, that can be
and
noted.
reasons why.
That's right. Great, thank you. So on that item 2, moved Lemon and seconded Reid that we received the minutes of the Audit and Risk meeting. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Item 3 is that we received the minutes of the draft annual plan submission hearings from the 2nd and 3rd of June for our information. They were already recorded as true and accurate at the previous meeting. Thank you, Councillor Alexander, and seconder, Councillor Gallagher. Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. And minutes of the draft annual plan submission deliberations held here on Thursday, the 11th of June. Again, it's recommended that we confirm those minutes. Is someone happy to move that? Councillor Gallagher and Mugford. Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favour? Councillor Reid.
Now I had a quick chat to Therese, but I didn't realise it was Naomi who had taken the minutes. We were quite unclear and quite confusing when we were talking about the walking and cycling strategy review and action plan and that sort of thing. the strategy is just the overarching document, and the action plan are where all the different walkways and cycleways and everything sits. Up until now, we've just had, it's been transport focused. It does reference recreational ones in the strategy, but this time round with all these ones that we're getting put in, these will have recreational ones that are in the action plan. So the strategy as it sits shouldn't need a review, but may need a review if, depending how well these recreational ones sit in the action plan. So I will do some wording to go through when I get it through my head to go through to you. But the main thing is the strategy, because of the high level document it is, and it doesn't, and it's in itself need reviewing now. It would be good if we didn't have that we were going to review it if we didn't need to review it. Yeah.
Is there a particular page that you're referring to? Because at the moment it's really just for the record of the minutes.
There's a number of different ones that we've mentioned and through it of walking and cycling, like the here's the first one that comes up with the Glen Tunnel to Whitecliff cycleway that we've said the project will be included in the walking and cycling strategy review. And then later on we talk about the action plan because that's when we clarified. So I can't go through and reference each individual one now, but if that clarification can then just be worked through.
Right. So I guess the minutes as recorded, I think, do probably capture the discussion because we did change the way that we referred to them. It's really about the actions that come out from the minutes and the decisions that we made that needs clarity around the type of work that's been requested.
But the recommendations is what's recorded on each of those. Like what we've agreed and carried will still be standing as they are, like I just read out with the Glen Tunnel to Whitecliffs cycleway, if you understand.
Yep. I guess what we're doing though is that is a true record of the decision that was made at the meeting.
Yeah.
So long as we're clear to staff about what we meant by that decision, which is, I agree with you, it's not just the strategy, it's the action plan and associated council documents around walking and cycling.
I know it's a thing to rub in, but it is quite a sort of move that we've changed that we're making on the way that we're approaching these documents by including like recreational stuff. And it is,
So I can just, so I think the minutes are correct with what's stated, but Mr. Washington, it's not, you're clear that the request from council through the deliberations and as a result of the discussion today is that it's the strategy, action plan and associated council documents for walking and cycling that is meant when we refer to review either the strategy or the action plan around walking and cycling.
Yes, I agree that the what we'll be reviewing up to the LTP will be the action plan, and the strategy, which is a high-level document, doesn't necessarily need it to be reviewed. One thing we will have further discussion about whether some recreational walkways that were identified through the annual plan actually sit in the walking and cycling action plan, or are they a recreation activity, walkway, walkway that may fit in some other activity management plan of council.
Okay,
so that's something still to be resolved.
I think we're all on the same page.
Yes.
I know it's just to clarify what positions, so because otherwise it is quite confusing to, because they are quite separate.
Cool. Thanks, Councillor Reid. That's good. All those in favour then that we confirm those minutes as moved by Gallagher and Mugford say aye. Against? Declare it carried. Page 6 has the current matters requiring attention. We've got solar panels on indoor courts coming back on the 22nd of July, chlorination report on the 12th of August, Glen Tunnel drainage on the 9th of September, and Arthur's Pass stormwater on the 9th of September as well. We move on to the reports. Report number 1 is on pages 117 through 271. A fairly large report. Moved Councillor Alexander and seconded Councillor Bland. This is the adoption of the annual plan 2020-2021 in amendments to the development contributions policy. There's two recommendations. One, that the council adopts the annual plan, and B, that the council adopts amendments to the development contribution, removing provision for an inflation adjustment in the coming year and introducing new development contributions for a block of land in Rolleston and for water in West Melton. And I know that over the last few meetings, I've acknowledged staff and councillors and the public for the work that has gone into getting us to where we are. So I won't go back over that today, other than to say it's been a huge workload, both through COVID and since we've been able to meet together again. And just thank you to all those involved to have got us to a position where we're able to adopt some recommendations around rating levels for the coming year. Councillor Alexander, did you have something?
Yeah, as mover, Sam, Mr. Mayor, I think that I will actually acknowledge all the effort that's gone into producing this and getting us to the point where we are. The staff in producing the initial version, the staff and chief executive in bringing forward the savings. And I want to acknowledge that part of those savings are no salary increase for our staff for the next 12 months. That's actually significant, and I think should be acknowledged by council, that as staff playing their part in achieving these savings, and is significant and should be acknowledged. I, as a ratepayer, am grateful for that, and we should recognise that, and hopefully the public should hear that. There have been many calls for savings to be made, and we have made those savings. I'd also like to note that no consultation period is simply a vote. There has been criticism in public that we did not listen to the majority who said no rate increase, but it is in fact the quality of the argument, not the quantity of the argument, that's important in consultation. And I think we have landed as a council in the right place with a rate increase that was less than the original proposed 3.5, that has been made able by savings found and not a reduction in our significant programs. So I'm very happy to be moving this, and very grateful to all the work of the staff, those who submitted and presented to us. Our council is considering it, and I think we've got to the right place.
Thanks, Councillor Alexander. Councillor McInnes.
Kia ora. Councillor Alexander said some awesome stuff there. Totally agree. I'm afraid my comment, other than to support that, is more of a slight pernickety bit on some of the wording. Page 125. Towards the bottom, there is a section that says there was a clear majority of respondents favouring a 0% rates increase or rates freeze, which, doing my sums, I can see from those choosing from options 1 to 3, out of that, yes, there was majority, but when you include in the large number of people who did not make any clear indication of how they felt about rates up or down, we didn't have wholehearted support for a rates freeze. And I'm concerned that having it on record there without putting that little extra line in that there was actually quite a lot of people who didn't say either way makes it look like we have gone against public opinion without considering a large proportion of others who were speaking more about their projects rather than rates.
Thank you, Sophie, and I agree with that, and don't think that we were going against the majority of submitters that came in here. And as Councillor Alexander has said, it's not just about the number of people that do submit on a particular topic, it's about the reasoning behind the decisions we make as much as it is about the representation we have for our communities here. So if that could be changed, Greg, I don't know how that can be done.
Yeah, I think we can just make a small amendment to that paragraph just to reflect the comments that have been made.
Thank you. And the other item to note is that we knew that the chief executive was taking a pay cut, and this week has been confirmed that I will be taking a pay cut as well. Through this is in response to COVID, along with a number of other elected members across New Zealand. The remuneration has decided that this week, so we can now publicly acknowledge that that's what will happen, and it has been confirmed by them. So along the lines that you spoke about, Councillor Alexander, it's from the top of our organisation, we're taking this situation very seriously and understand the impact on many people across our district, and it is impacting on the two of us as well. Is there any further discussion, Councillor Alexander? I'll just come back to you unless there's anyone else that would like to speak.
This is just not, it's just a report that during the preparation for the meeting and reading through the draft annual plan in the document, I did send through 2 minor amendments, which Mr. Bell has adopted, they were to expand on the projects that the Foster Park Road was Foster Park Road and site landscaping. There'd been considerable community concern that it was rather a gold-plated road, but the project actually it encompasses much more than just a roadway, and also that on the Selwyn Central Ward projects, that the Walkers Road widening be included.
Okay. Thank you. So with those changes and those presented by Councillor McInnes today, any further discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carries. Item number 2 is the setting of rates for the year 1 July through 30th of June 2021. There's a number of recommendations here that have a lot of sub recommendations within them, and I don't intend to read through all of them, other than to note that this is the same process that we run through every year. We only set rates for each year, and even when we do the long-term plan, that gives us an indication of where we'll be going and the projects that we'll be undertaking and what the costs of those projects and of the services we provide to the community will be. But we only ever set the rates for 1 year at a time. Greg, I wonder if there's anything you'd like to say particularly on any of these rates?
Yeah, just to say that there's excuse me, relatively minor changes to what was adopted last year. So just for the record, the uniform annual general charge and the general rate are both being increased by 3%. Water rates, including the volumetric charges, are going up by 4%, and water rates by 3%, plus some changes to the loan rates that a few ratepayers pay just to reflect the reduction in interest rates. Other than that, the rates are as they were a year ago.
Great, thank you. Plan is that this is the first step in a reset for ourselves, and it's been acknowledged right through this work stream that at the moment we're dealing with the information we have, but the analysis of the next few months for Selwyn and for New Zealand is that things are likely to get worse, and through the long-term plan that gives us the opportunity to take a longer, deeper breath and think about what our direction setting will need to be for the next 10 years. Not only in response to COVID, but also knowing the pressures and the demands that our community has and expectations that they have on us as a council. So this is stage 1 of that breath, and stage 2 will be over the next 6 to 12 months as we adopt the long-term plan for next year. Mover and a seconder for the second part of the rate setting, Councillor Bland and Councillor Epeha. All those in favour of 2A through to 157? No, I don't know what the number is. There's a lot of rates being set there. It's on everything on pages 272 through to 298. Please say aye. Against? Declare it carried. Item number 3 is the District Licensing Committee, and Chief Licensing Officer Malcolm, thank you for joining us today. Note the conflict from Councillor Hassan, who stepped away from the table. This is on pages 299 through 304. Malcolm, I wonder if you just take us through some of the highlights in your report.
Good afternoon. I'll take my report as read and just add that our licensees are absolutely thrilled now that we've moved to alert level 1. They're back to normal. Their numbers are almost back to normal as well in terms of their patrons, and they are very positive going forward. I went out with police on Saturday the 13th of June, and visited all the hotels and taverns in our area, and yeah, the publicans were very, very positive and thrilled to be, like I say, that we're in alert level 1. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. One of the things that came up through the hearings was the idea of the costs and the around licensing, and part of the staff response and what we agreed to as a council was to support the work to try and identify ways of lowering the risk to people and for businesses, so that actually the licensing was reduced as well. has there been any change in that space, or is there anything you could tell us about that attitude, which I'm guessing is the same as it's always been, but with a bit of heightened scrutiny on it?
Yeah, so the regulations allow for us to reduce the risk weightings for licensed premises. And there were 2 licensed premises that took that opportunity up, and their risk ratings were lowered, which means they pay less fees. So we're happy to look at any licensed premises who may be in a bit of strife. And we put in process an application form in relation to that. And it still exists, and it's still available to any premises or any licensee that would like to take that up.
And what sort of things are required to lower the risk?
It's just, it talks about any particular circumstances. So if you face any particular circumstances, you can apply to the council to lower your risk rating. And the COVID-19 pandemic is definitely particular circumstances. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions for Malcolm this afternoon? Do a mover and seconder to receive the report? Lemon and Ipaha. All those in favour say aye. Against? Declare it carried. Thanks, Malcolm. Item number 4 is my verbal report, and I've just left this item on the agenda just in case there were things that had come up. This is an item that we had on the agenda through the COVID lockdown as things change really rapidly, and I'm not sure that it'll remain on the agenda every 2 weeks, but it's just a good chance for me to update council with anything that has happened. And of particular note, the NZTA held a meeting in Castle Hill that I chaired, and it was around access to State Highway 73, particularly through the 2 passes, Porters Pass and Arthurs Pass, and the way that NZTA was going to manage that road. There were 3 main issues that were the topic of discussion. One was around local access, and over the last 3 years there's been local passes that have allowed locals that have experience driving the road, have the right vehicles to be there, and where the road is considered safe for experienced drivers to be able to get home or get their children home from school. So that was a topic of discussion. The use of chains on the route, which NZTA had removed the flexibility there, was another topic of discussion. And the idea that NZTA was going to close the road at the first whiff of snow was the other thing that had come up in the community. So NZTA fronted the meeting along with their contractors and explained why the decisions had been where they were, and then spent the rest of the meeting listening to the views of the community, which were strongly conveyed to them. NZTA has put out a press statement towards the end of last week about a review of what their policy was going to be, and we were expecting some communication back to the community themselves by Friday this week, which was their commitment and undertaking they gave them at the meeting. So thank you to Councillor Mugford, who came up to the meeting, and a community board member, Karen Mears, also attended with myself, and we had staff, Murray Washington and Al Lawn, were also there to be able to answer any questions from the local roads point of view. So a good outcome in the end, and we just wait to see what the final decision is, particularly around the local passes, which hasn't been communicated through press release because it's more of a local matter than a national matter there. Other than that, I don't have anything else to report, unless anyone's got any questions on that state highway. Councillor Alexander.
No, I don't actually have questions on state highway. I have a question on citizenship ceremonies, and if you had any information about when they might resume.
We have received some information from DIA, and we'll circulate that to councillors. At the moment, we won't be resuming those in the next month, but we will be looking to resume them as soon as we can. They are a great chance for those that become citizens to be formally acknowledged in a setting that recognises the importance of the occasion rather than just receiving a certificate at home. So yes, we will be looking to bring them back, Mark, and I'll give you the latest update.
Thank you. And the other question I had was, for those who've been granted their citizenship during this period where we're not holding ceremonies, could we give some thought to some ceremony that they could come to acknowledge in a more community way the fact they've received citizenship in that period? Because I know for a lot of people, granting of citizenships is made very special by the event, and those who have received it without the event really may be feeling that they've missed out on an important part, and I'd like to think we could acknowledge it in some way at some point.
And the communication from DIA included some commentary on that, saying that it wasn't necessary for councils to hold a retrospective ceremony for them, but if councils want to, then we can. So that'll be a decision we can make. So thanks for your feedback on that. The last thing I'll say is that national elections are coming up this year. And so far I've met with two candidates for Selwyn, the Labour candidate and the national candidate. And I will continue to meet with any new candidate that's announced for any Selwyn seat going forward. I think that it's really important that as a council we have the best relationship we can with whoever wins the seat after the election, and meeting and knowing and having them in the best space that they can before the election is going to be important to us going forward as well. So taking a completely neutral view as to preference and what's going to happen, but play with a straight bat and offer the same advice and information to any Selwyn candidate. I'll move that you receive my report. And seconded, Epaha.
Yes.
And a question?
Yes. Thank you very much, Worship. Will that invitation also extend to candidates from Te Tai Tonga as well for the South Island?
Anyone representing the Selwyn electorate or an area covering Selwyn electorate, I think is important. Yes. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare it carried. Chief Executive's report is on pages 305 through 365.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody. Largely for information, the report this month as a result, of course, of the emphasis that's been on draft annual plan matters. Special reserve booklets. Thank you very much to all councillors for participation. Acknowledged communication in the last 24 hours from councillors Miller and our two Ellesmere councillors. Those suggestions from you have been incorporated in the booklet or about to be incorporated into the booklet. Probably the comment I'd make is that given that council is under the pressure that it is financially, it is more incumbent on councillors and the community than ever to become aware of these funds that are available for use. Bear in mind, this is money that's already in the tin, whilst it may have been put aside for specific purpose, or there may be a particular governance role or decision-making role that's there either around this table or around the community. I think it's time that we had a look at that, we reviewed it. There are tens of thousands of dollars there that are available for projects. So I would encourage you to review those in your ward again. And the key point is my second paragraph where I talk about being incumbent on members to ensure the respective communities are aware of the existence of these funds. Second item, Mr. Mayor, is just a reminder. We're often asked this time of year when we're adopting our draft annual plan, what do we get for our rates? On page 342, and I just had a look at it myself, and I think it'd be challenging if anybody's been able to read that. But certainly the link to our website, and remind you, just direct the community to that. This is the answer to the question. It is a wee bit fluid in terms of some of the major activities, but a really valuable resource that's been prepared by Stephen Hill and his team. Items 3 and 4 are for the information of councillors, Mr. Mayor, particularly take councillors to the second last paragraph on page 307, which is with respect to the reduction in the proposed lease by the museum, and that will result in a decrease of $12,349 for this council. Happy to answer any questions on any aspects of the report content, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions for the Chief Executive? Councillor Hassan.
Just one query, and it's not a criticism, but in your report, you've actually highlighted a link to a document, and it's just got found here. Would it be helpful that people who don't have access to maybe a computer have reference to a hard copy of that document where they can find it?
Yeah, sure. Look, we're a phone call away, so if anybody wants that, just on the phone, and we will post it through to them, Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Councillor McInnes.
Just to say that that particular link goes, you can actually go down to page 342. That is the document that is referred to.
Mover and seconder for this report. Hassan, you happy to move? Great. Gallagher, second. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Group Manager Report, Insurance Placement for the 12 months ending 30th of June 2021. Douglas.
Thank you, Worship. Report was circulated to you last night. I apologise that this report, unfortunately, the insurer only gets the information really as close to 30 June as they can, and obviously wanting to get this tidied up as your last meeting. So the insurance, in simple terms, is consistent with the report to Audit and Risk in May. A budget completion which is just slightly over the budget, as you'll see on the table there on page 4, I think it is, at 1.462 million compared to a cost of 1.466 million. So a good outcome financially, has the cover that we require and seek. So put forward for your recommendation so we can place the insurance by 30 June.
Thank you. Questions for Douglas? Councillor Alexander.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit confused in the body of your report, Mr. Marshall. You refer to the public liability being by a mutual pool, but as I read the Marsh report, that's not quite what they said there about public liability. So I'm still struggling to reconcile the two, where the public liability was being with.
I have to reread that section of the report. I will. Do you want, because that's quite a fundamental issue, do you want to just park the report for the moment? Come back to it in a second. I'll just reread that. That's all right. Yeah.
We'll just let that matter sit, and we'll come back to that and move on to the next report on the agenda, which is the Accounting Manager, pages 366 through 368, Tramway Reserve Trust to exempt the organisation under section 7.3 of the Local Government Act 2002. Craig Moody. Oh, Councillor Lemon will move. Great. Is there a seconder? Alexander. Sorry, I looked across. Craig Moody.
So the purpose of this report is just to use section 7.3 of the Local Government Act to exempt the Tramway Reserve Trust from CCO status. The reason we want to do this is because the trust is effectively non-active and it's effectively costing the council $2,000 a year in audit fees unnecessarily. So it's just, that's the main purpose of it. It doesn't really change the nature of the trust in any way whatsoever. It allows the trust to continue without an audit for the financial year. And the only transaction going through the trust at the moment is the audit fee. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Well, Craig, does this mean that we still receive and agree to statements of intent and annual reports from the trust, or does it remove all of that responsibility as well?
No, it just removes the audit.
Just the audit
component. Still prepare the annual report, although there'll be no transactions through the annual report, but that still has to be provided to the charities office annually as well. So we'll still prepare a statement of intent internally, but it's not actually a requirement.
Okay, Councillor Hassan.
Yes, I've got, I guess, a planning query with regards to the structure of this trust. It was, if I recall, set up as a condition of a resource consent application at the time. And I'm just curious, if we don't have, we have it as a condition of the consent, and we don't have a trust as per se managing it, it would be good to have an update on the cross-referencing to make sure that we are actually still complying with the resource consent condition in the management of this trust.
Do you want to say that?
Certainly that is an action item, Councillor Hassan, that we can follow up on. Similar questions are asked each year with respect to the requirement for consent compliance. So I think for the benefit of the new councillors to the table, it would be good practice to review that again. So I would encourage council to adopt the recommendation, but acknowledging that that review will come back, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very valid question. My understanding is that their interaction is largely with DOC now and the management of that. So I think that's probably why there's an inactivity of funds happening there, that they're funded through DOC. So it's not that they're not doing anything, it's just that they're not financially using those funds. But it would be good to get that clarification. You're quite correct, because it is very important to the resource consent for the Ellesmere sewage disposal scheme.
Education for an education facility in Acton Park. There's 3 recommendations. One, that we accept the recommendation of the Independent Commissioner in regard to the notice of requirement. Pursuant to Section 171 of the Resource Management Act, we recommend to the Ministry of Education that the notice of requirement for an educational facility be confirmed, and delegates the planning managers take any steps necessary to give effect to this recommendation. Moved Alexander, seconded Bland. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Alexander.
Just the area I have concern with, and I hope will be picked up in the traffic management plan, is that school has the technical training suite for a number of the schools in our area. So that in the travel management plan, it's not just particularly buses bringing the local students to the school, it's buses bringing students in for that technical training. And that it wasn't clear to me from reading this report where these buses were going to be parked, whether they were going to be parked within the Ministry of Education site or in the neighbouring streets. Now, that could be a significant number of buses parking on streets that will be in part residential, as the school is surrounded by residential properties. So I'm just highlighting that and hoping that when the traffic management plans are considered, that will be an aspect they look at, that the streets aren't full of the bus parking during the day for those students being transferred, because I believe that's an activity that should be on site.
Thank you. Ben?
Yeah, that will be the purpose of that plan, and a key detail, and that's why the condition is there. Unless Jocelyn, you have anything else to add? That's all good.
Councillor Reid?
Thank you, and I second those comments that Councillor Alexander has made. I think I have to congratulate the staff and the MOE with this. It's actually really good to see about transport management plan and school travel plan that has all been written in, that this needs to be worked through with council. And I think that's good, because that's really important for actually getting good active transport happening at the school. And this is going to be a large school. It's going up to 750 students. So it's very important that we're mindful about traffic management. Although the pickup and drop-off times are relatively short compared to the school day, they are actually an issue which is regularly brought up with us at council, as issues around schools. And there are obviously also very many health benefits with walking and cycling. And there's also, it means that kids have got awareness of traffic and road safety, which actually helps them when they're going on learning to drive. But one thing I'm concerned about, and I have raised this with staff, is in the advice note 2C, it talks about where possible shared surfaces should be used to indicate equal status for vehicles and pedestrians, and footpaths may not be required, which is sort of at odds in where we are going as council and having footpaths through car parks. And particularly in a school, if you've got young children around, they're not very easily seen above vehicles as well. So I'm just quite mindful that this is something that hopefully won't be implemented. And I hope that we have very good discussions between our staff and the MOE, and whether it's MOE or their representatives or whatever, to make sure we have a very safe school, that people feel safe for their children to get to and from school.
Ben, do you have any comments on that?
Only that the transport plan can look into that space. It's internal to the site, that shared space. There's an outline plan process to come as well that we can make those comments and details on as well. little bit hamstrung that at the end of the day, it's a designated site for a school. If that's where they look to proceed, we'll still making sure it is a safe environment, and we use the outline plan process to push back on those issues.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare it carried. The next item is pages 390 through 407 and the notice of requirement for the Selwyn District extension of Kilby Recreation Reserve. Move Councillor Reid. Second, Councillor Mugford. Any discussion on that item? There's 3 recommendations. Recommendation of an independent commissioner, waives the appeal rights, delegates the planning manager the delegation, taking the steps necessary to give effect. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare it carried. Next is pages 408 through 425. This is the notice of requirement for NZTA for a weighbridge station located near Ashburton district, which is on the north side of the Rakaia River. Accepts the it's A, that we accept the recommendation of an independent commissioner in regard to the notice of requirement. B, pursuant to section 171, recommends to NZTA that the notice of requirement for a weighbridge station be confirmed and delegates to the planning manager again any steps necessary to make this work. And Councillor Leaper has stepped away from the table for this discussion and decision. And I'll just note at the outset, the Mayor of Ashburton, while understanding the process that we have gone through, does not feel that NZTA has done a particularly good job at consulting affected parties in this discussion, and wanted me to say that today. So not that that is about the process that we have had to run ourselves, but it's a comment in relation to our external stakeholder relationships with those who we interact with, and NZTA as a close partner and funder of many of the works that we do. And as I noted earlier, we're heavily involved in Castle Hill and the outcomes there, but don't appear to have been as involved in this circumstance. And it affects not only ourselves, but Ashburton as well. Do I have a mover and seconder for this report? Alexander and Bland. Bland, Alexander, sorry. Councillor Bland, anything you'd like to add? No, Councillor Lemon.
Yeah, just I'll reinforce your comments, Mr. Mayor, that whilst statutorily they've gone through the correct process, that perhaps better consultation with the community would have been advantageous. And it's along similar lines to the conversation we had at the start of the meeting with State Highway 73, I think. It's just perhaps a bit of a lesson that engagement early and thoroughly is a better process than just sticking to the rules. So you just make that comment before we vote.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Yeah, I want to reiterate the concerns that you've raised and the Mayor of Ashburton have raised. The report here seems to be very heavy on the fact it's a great place to catch trucks from diverting around it, but it's very light on actually the safety issues, the valid safety issues that NZTA, the Trucking Association, I think anyone who's driven across the Rakaia Bridge recently or at any time would say that's not a great place to put that. And, you know, we task NZTA with building safer roads for us to travel on and safer work streams. And it seems like in this instance, expediency's got in front of safety. And, you know, I have a lot of sympathy for our Ashburton colleagues. They're across the border batting from them, and we're here sitting here sort of approving it. But I don't think it really cuts the mustard, really. And, you know, I think it has to be said that we'd really want to see some significant safety improvements in this design or changes to that road to make that safe, because it's a very, very high traffic flow area with multiple vehicles and exiting and entering at speed. And it remains to be seen how they can make that a safely operating activity without significant roadworks or a significant reduction in speed limits. So I certainly want to register my concern, and I think I'd like to see our council register our concern that we would like to see significant work done and assurance done that safety will become a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 priority in this proposal, where at the moment it very much appears that it's all about capturing trucks and trying to avoid diversions.
Thank you. Tim Harris, I wonder whether you just want to touch on, because these concerns have been raised over a number of weeks by both ourselves and our community as well as those in Ashburton, and maybe you just talk us through the steps that have been taken to so far address some of those concerns. And this final document is quite different than what was initially proposed with some changes. So Ben, whoever's going to talk about.
Yeah, through the process, I've been in touch with ADC Mayor, and just alluding to those steps. At the beginning, there was issues raised, and that's where the safety audit was completed, and that's why you had that amended plan circulated today. That's what it's been based on. What we have in front of us is, I guess, the agency responsible for State Highway saying they've done the work and done it's safe. Our asset transport officers agree. Whether it's the right location as they are the designating authority, they own the land. We can't actually look at alternative sites. We look at the site that they have chosen. On the basis of evidence provided, we have no reason to question the safety aspects of it. And we'll be relaying that back. I guess all we can relay back to the community is the process and steps we've taken. This is just a recommendation from council as well. We don't actually make the decision. So the next step from here will be, this is the recommendation based on the process we've taken, and it'll be up to NZTA to issue their final decision within 30 working days.
Say aye. Against? Declare it carried. Douglas, do you want to come back to your paper now? Sorry, Councillor Epar. You're back. Welcome back to the table. So we'll just move back to the item we put off around insurance, which is item 6. And Douglas, if you'd like to just update us with the answers to Councillor Alexander's questions.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Alexander, for that question. I just want to, the clarity here is that this policy, there's about 500 to 600 councils in Australia, which we piggybacked on part of. I think where the confusion or error might be is that there might be a mutual fund in there, but I'm assured in discussions with our insurer, because there's also been a change in insurance broker in the last 12 months, this insurance is in our own name. So it's actually arguably stronger and better insurance than under a mutual fund anyway. So I'll get that clarified and that change. So the policy is in our name, is as per the cover that's there. It's possibly the way it's been described 3 years ago we moved across there, is that the mutual fund arrangement was never part of us because we always held in our own name. So I'll get that clarified for your next meeting in terms of a matter and direction. So with that clarity, unless there's any other questions,
No, just for the wider meeting, I raised a couple of issues with Mr. Marshall around, number one was pivot insurance. We have a separate pivot insurance policy which notes Rayburn and Hororada. Just wanted to check that Pines was covered and their pivots. I'm assured that it's covered under a separate policy, so that we're just investigating, I think the staff are investigating whether there's any cost savings to be made by moving the Pines pivots to agri cover rather than wastewater disposal. The second question was around the Marsh comment that given the scale of infrastructure increase and the increased cost of replacement, whether our valuations were still correct around our replacement value of underground assets. So what I'd like to note at this meeting that before the next insurance round renewal, we would either rerun the GNS model again or request a different model from Marsh to actually make sure that we keep abreast of valuations.
Are there any further, Councillor Alexander?
Yeah, I'm just finding it. I just did have a question on the schedules. And again, it was around the public liability on page 2 of the report. It was almost a 50% jump in the premium. Did seem somewhat surprising. I wonder if there's any comment on that quantum.
First comment I'd make is that I think this area and the commentary, and it's fairly discussed with me a few months back, is that this is becoming harder to buy appropriate insurance, not just for local government, but also for private sector in this indemnity. If you look at some of the claims there, there's a number listed there in New Zealand. Some of them are large. Even though you're not in a mutual pool, your insurance is obviously going to be affected by the industry in general where there are claims. So I'm just happy we can actually provide insurance. I think this council's been also prudently got its weather tightness issue self-insured, and we've got a bit of a fund there, although claims do come on that fund. So yes, a bit of a surprise, but good to have insurance. And I suppose good to have enough budget where we can move our insurance budget around and keep within a cap. So just in regard to Councillor Miller's comments, yep, we will look at the pivot and just see whether there's also pivots at Ellesmere treatment plant. I think recollection, and this is only a technical issue, there was something about the two pivots at Horarat and Rayburn Farm agriculture, the other two are more to wastewater. I think that's why they sit in there, but I'll get that clarified. And the update on that report probably wasn't down to run it next year, but actually probably prudent to do that based on just probably sensible to do it more regularly. So.
Great. Thank you. So recommendation A, we approve the replacement of insurance cover for the financial year through commencing 30th of June 2020. Does it actually commence 1st of July?
Yeah, it does. We just talk about 12 months into 30 June 21, but yes, 1 July.
Yeah.
It technically might be 4 p.m. on the 30th of June though, so
leave it 30th.
Perhaps leave me to worry about that.
Okay.
Time, just so we don't miss an hour or something.
Great. And that the group manager properly has delegated the responsibility to complete the associated documentation, accept minor changes to the dollar value up to a value of 10% above the budget. And A above, moved. Epaha, seconded. Lemon. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare it carried. Thanks, Douglas, and for finding out those answers during the meeting. Item 11 is on pages 426 through 432, and this is the transportation monthly updates. Andrew. Yeah, if you'd like to take a seat at the front there, Andrew. I've just introduced your paper. If you'd like to press the button on the microphone, is there anything in particular you'd like to highlight in your report?
You're obviously very efficient today with everything you've been doing.
Always.
As always, yes, of course. Okay, so I'll probably just concentrate on a few things that are of interest in the monthly report. And that I will start with the Prevalent intersection upgrades. We're tracking along quite happily with that. In regards to the fact we're processing the land acquisition, have to commend the Deputy Mayor for his assistance over the last week or so with addressing some impasses that we've had with a couple of landowners, which has sort of been holding us back. So that's been great. Talking to our project engineer this morning, things are tracking on in terms of the detailed design. So we're keeping to schedule with that, and also from the consenting aspect as well. So things are going according to plan, as well as can be expected at this stage. And the detailed design will be probably finished in the next week, in a couple of weeks' time. So it'll be good to see those specific plans for that work. In terms of CSM2, sorry, I'm probably jumping around here a little bit. You obviously have been aware of the fact that they've been progressively opening up CSM2 as they're completing works and the lanes to Christchurch. We've been aware that it has been causing a bit of angst around some of the temporary traffic management and around the Springs and Marshes Road and even Shands Road in some respects. NCTA are well aware of that, and we'll be working with them to make sure they mitigate those effects. But it's good to see that the traffic on the new highway alignment, and from all accounts from people I've been talking to, it's been well received in terms of even having that sort of tenuous link up and running. Tomorrow, myself and Councillor Mark will be attending the stakeholder presentation on the State Highway 1 Rolleston business case. That's to present the preferred program after looking at a number of options on that. So from what I've reviewed already, that sort of seems to be ticking a lot of the boxes. And so we're very confident that that's going to proceed well. Certainly talking to NZTA in the interim, they are very keen to see the projects along there up and running as soon as possible. EV charging sites. We should be in a position to bring a report to council this time next month to adopt the framework agreements on the legal agreements to set those charging stations up, and also the ability then to just quite easily add sites to those agreements as we go forward. So as I say, Rob Allen and myself are working on that at the moment, and we'll be with you in about a month's time. I think that's probably pretty much it for me in regards to things of interest at the moment, unless you've got any other questions on anything in the report.
Thank you. Firstly, the meeting that you did attending with Councillor Alexander, is it a public meeting, or is that open to other councillors to be able to attend as well?
No, it's not a public meeting. It's a stakeholder representation meeting. So Councillor Mark will be attending on all of your behalf. And
is there may be one or two other councillors that would like to attend that. There's the opportunity for that, for them to come as well?
To be frank, no, there isn't, because it's basically following the same process and procedure for the stakeholder engagement that's been running throughout the course of the business case. What we will be doing is asking the question from here on in, what is then the role of NZTA to describe and to disseminate information on what is potentially going to be decided.
Okay, so if there's any comments or concerns that people have that they'd like Mark to raise at that meeting with Andrew, then please share those with Councillor Alexander. Secondly, good work on the EV charging. It's great to see that that's progressing. Look forward to that coming back next month. And the $60 million for upgrades that was announced earlier in the year, that includes the State Highway 73 West Melton intersection upgrade, includes some changes on State Highway 1, but the link on Whedon's Road in between is currently unfunded. Yeah, so Whedon's Road may actually see quite an increase in traffic, but there's no current plans for us to upgrade that road, or is that just, where does that project sit?
Well, we definitely had the plans to upgrade that section of road, and it was meant to be happening in this coming financial year. But unfortunately, it was the casualty of that funding that was reduced by NZTA from the, about this time last year. So we're trying to turn that ship around, if you want to put it that way, in terms of their thinking. But I can't give you anything further at this point in time. We're still trying, but based on how far I get with NZTA at the moment, I will need to formulate a position for you in terms of what we need to do to address it in the next long-term plan.
Thank you. And I mean, it's been a win having the $60 million spent here, and that's a really great thing, but it just seems that the little bit of corridor that links the two spends along State Highway 1 and State Highway 73 is a bit of a missing piece at the moment. So just to encourage your continued advocacy on our behalf, and if that happens to come up at the meeting tomorrow, then please take the opportunity. Councillor Mugford.
Yeah, just on the Colgate Roads, I was at Colgate Township Committee meeting last night, and they were interested in progressing this, and they were looking at a date in the middle of September. Would you be ready for that sort of timing?
Yeah, that would be ideal. Thank you. One of the problems that we've had is Asti Boyle, who was our main person looking after the property side of things, obviously left the council, which put us into a bit of a position. And so her replacement is starting in the next couple of weeks. And so one of the first jobs that she's going to have is to get up to speed on this so that we can reactivate it for you in terms of going forward. And I've talked to Rob Allen again on that, and he's all on board with that aspect. Thank you.
Councillor Alexander.
Yeah, my question was really more for Councillor Reid. That in the report, it refers to a Public Transport Joint Committee meeting last week where things were being discussed. I wonder if Councillor Reid had anything to update from that.
There wasn't much that was discussed in the public forum. I'm just trying to think, Andrew, what...
Well, if I can summarise, I think...
Yeah, I don't have the agenda.
No, that's all right. Can I fill in the gap if I can? I probably should have done it in the first place. So anyway, there was a workshop with the PT Joint Committee last week, and that was basically the consultant explaining to the Joint Committee where they've got to so far with the business case on the three main elements of the PT Futures work, and that is the foundations, Resta Network and MRT. So it was really just explaining to them the sort of results that they're getting out of this and getting some direction from the committee on any comments at this point going forward. And that's probably pretty much as much as I can say about it at this particular time. Yeah.
And lastly, there's a road safety committee doesn't exist at this present point in time, and there's been some discussion around working with our neighbours on road safety, and I understand that there's a meeting with Waimakariri coming up that Councillor Reid and Councillor Mugford are going to be invited to. But I think that there's room for a discussion for ourselves around how road safety is handled and what manner, and is this reporting working for us as a council, and are there further things that we would like discussed, or is there a different setup that we would like to see? So that's really for the members of the council, just a heads up that there is a continuing discussion with our neighbours, but there may be some extra work that's required from us, and if the structure doesn't serve the needs of the membership, then happy to look at what might. Councillor Reid, any comments on that? Councillor Mugford?
Yeah, I feel that not having a road safety committee, that we're missing out, and we talk about the NZTA and what they wanted to do. I believe that we would have had more to do with as a council if we'd had them on board at our meetings. So I think it's something as a council we're missing out on.
Thank you.
I second Councillor Mugford's comments. I mean, we've had a number of times the NZTA has brought up things with us at that committee, and of course we've got with the police, a trucking association there as well, and so there's others who are there that can sit and talk at the table, and with having our staff there as well, and we can have those frank conversations, and it's quite run it as quite an informal meeting, but it's also good keeping up those relationships, and I think that's where we sort of dropped the ball a bit, is those relationships.
Yeah, so I think there is value in reconstituting something, and we'll look to do that post your meeting with Waimakariri and see where we go. Thank you, Andrew, for the report. So mover and seconder to receive Andrew's report. Reid, McInnes. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Thanks, Andrew. Pages 433 through 466, property transaction update. Douglas. And Douglas, could I just ask, maybe you come to the front of the room? Just it's much easier to have. It's quite a reasonable report, so.
Thank you, Worship. So a number of update items on this report, but also a number of recommendations for you to consider as well. Seem to, sorry, buying a little bit of time here while I actually open the agenda report since I've closed it coming across here. Right. The recommendations, it might pay if I just talk to those so we can just be considering those as we work down. So part B is the Hororata site. So one thing I just want to stress in there, this is the recommendation here is just to start a conversation with Doc. The importance on an item like this where we're revoking the reserve designation is the conversation needs to be, well thought out, well documented, good public environment. And in working with Doc over the years, the importance is talking to them early. So although arguably this site does have a heritage listing on it from council through district plan process, and we've also identified it for a sale and funding source, there's a couple of processes to work through there. But even if we're going to start and part of this, I suppose, is to just get some direction from yourselves. Part of it, if we're also looking and we've indicated to the heritage group they want to buy it, we need to get rid of this reserve designation process. So I suppose to help you with this recommendation when we get to it, just to get the thinking is, If you do think you're going to hold it as a heritage asset in perpetuity, then there would be no need to remove this designation. But if you think that maybe that heritage designation does need to be considered in some form, then starting this process is only starting the process, but it allows us to get underway, because it will take probably a good 18 months, 2 years to go through this process for this piece of land and also the endowment land. And the second item there, C, that's now just getting the process underway for appointing agents to a number of sections in both townships, which we're ready to bring to the market. So the two resolutions there for you to consider. So working through, if I just go through the headlines, would probably be sensible, and maybe I just pause slightly and take questions. So on Aquatic Centre, a pretty exciting milestone that isn't actually, I don't think it's noted here, but beams have arrived for the extension area. They obviously are large, so they're sitting in the back of the site now. So you would have noticed, not sure if the crane's there today, but there was a crane yesterday across the road. There's a crane down at Te Aratia, and there'll be a crane in the next few weeks to lift these beams in place. So Rolleston with 3 large cranes, that's showing really great progress. So good news on Te Aratia.
We can also note for the Aquatic Centre that today is actually the 7th anniversary of the opening to the public of the Aquatic Centre itself. So it's those 7 years that it has become probably the most well-used facility in our district.
Cool. So Te Aratia, just moving along. I think it's really important that if you haven't done it, you go for a walk. We're now starting to see some footpaths, size of that, treescape and that, but also really exciting is the JP Singh shops across the road coming out of the ground. So you're now starting to get the feel of what a main street in the Rolleston town centre will look like, which is really good. Foster Park Indoor Courts, there's a really good structure there now sitting on that site. And that's getting to see what that large building is going to be looking like. And as we reported further up in the meeting, we are looking at this solar issue. Next item is this.
No, my question was actually on the recommendation B.
We'll come back to the recommendations. That's cool. We'll just go through this report.
Foster Park, Dines Road, car park and the football club relocation. So the car park's effectively finished, looking really great. The club room project is struggling a bit. We've got updated programs from the contractor, and we are having a regular dialogue with the rugby club in terms of that process there. So a number of COVID lockdown issues, which we probably appreciate, and now just trying to really push the contractor along to try and get this building open for the club, obviously with some form of the season still available to them. So that's probably the one project that is of concern to us in terms of this timeline, but we'll obviously keep pushing. Next one is to deal with the Brookside Road, Anzac Lane subdivision there. So say we're getting that ready to come to the market. There's one or two little link strip issues that we're just looking now to see whether we actually need them, because they're sitting on a walkway which we own. It's technical stuff, but link strips, you only really want those if you need them, but we're removing those.
Yeah, hi Douglas. Just an indication perhaps of what time frame you would expect that these properties would go on the market.
So assuming we appoint an agent today, or sorry, the process for agents would have agents appointed, I would suggest, for the next 6 weeks. And then these would come to the market probably late August. We've just got to get the subdivision titles. We've got titles here, but there's a few things we've just got to tidy up with the subdivision.
There's one aspect, and I understand that from the CEO that there will be a report coming to council, and we were approached a wee while ago by a developer who was hoping to enter into some sort of a relationships. Perhaps it's still tentative at the moment with the council to see if we can build affordable housing or something along those lines. And I was wondering if perhaps we could just wait for that report or consider other options for this land and in that respect, or if you perhaps discuss it with the CEO or who was doing this report at a later stage before we just go holus bolus and dispose of them. There may be other options.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll deal with that offline with Douglas.
Responsible camping, an update on that process. We obviously don't expect funding in this area this coming year. We've had I think Councillor Mugford and I would describe as a useful meeting in Lake Coleridge on Friday night to advance their toilet project, which is good. And we've got work underway at the moment at Lakeside with the contractor. And I don't think we're too far off getting the Springston toilet in the ground as well. So, yeah, and I think we've done extremely well, as we've said a number of times, out of that funding. Just really a quick update on the camping items there. Surplus Crown land process on 440. Andrew Maisie just referred to our new staff member who's starting with us early July. Actually has experience in this type of work, which is very useful for us, not probably to the degree that's there, but does understand the local government arrangements, which is really helpful. So this will be a big bit of area for us, because we will start to see a few of these properties actually come to the market, in essence, because the stock process will get finished. So that's good progress coming up in the next 12 months. Leaston, so obviously decisions made today on as part of the annual plan adoption for the library community centre process to move forward, and we're hoping to have a meeting on the medical side of things in the next week to 10 days. So that's sort of progressing sort of under its own independent steam because of the commercial leasing arrangement we have with that side. Horata, so I've referred to issues there. Quite a fulsome report here, and attached here is all the memorandums regarding the reserve verification process and the endowment land process. So that continues, and then a bit of an update quickly on the earthquake seismic work there. Balance the items there. West Melbourne Community Park. I mean, we're just really waiting now for our contractor to be able to get on site and commence. Reed's Pit. Looks like all our earthworks are almost complete there, which is really good. Good saving on that contract, and working on that particular approach. And the final two there, which are the Prebleton domain, again, just a resource consent to pop out, and the Liffey walkway cycleway extension. If you do have 10 minutes to park there by the Arawera Primary School and walk that section of the Liffey, that's just gorgeous. That'll be the last report we have on this particular item. And Andrew has referred to the Prebleton intersections, which I think is the last item. Oh, sorry, Sale Residential sections is the last item. So concentrating on the Sale Residential sections.
Sorry, Mr. Marshall, I had a question. I wasn't quite quick enough to get in with respect to Reed's Pits and the timetabling of when it might actually be available. I see we're planning on building the tracks next spring, summer. So does that indicate sort of an opening for the public Q1-ish, Q2-ish next year, or do we have a sort of provisional schedule when we might see it available for use?
I think we strongly prefer that it's Q4 this calendar year. So I think
even without the tracks built, sort of just the public use of the car park and landscaped area.
I don't think the tracks probably they're not, in terms of they're not a heavily compacted piece of work. So I would expect that hopefully will be sorted out. So we don't want to get more of the summer than less of the summer. So yeah, I'd say, looking at maybe Christmas, if we get a run there, I would personally want to see this one finished well and truly by Christmas so we can get on with it. So yeah, but we obviously just need the budget to be adopted so we can work out our detailed planning. This is obviously a carryover project, but it's one that we'd want to finish earlier rather than later in the 21 financial year. So residential sections, yeah.
Righto. I guess we're at the pointy end of it now, and I'm going to rehash my hearty annual about we don't have any strategy about to do with the proceeds. I am in absolute despair that we don't seem to be able to get a concrete piece of policy in place when we sell properties. And we've got a property investment strategy and an investment strategy which needs funds. And I'm not in favour of property being sold or developed property being sold and not the funds not being allocated to where they'll be placed, whether it be held in a designated property acquisition fund or whatever it is. I think there needs to be some solid work done on it. And as I said, I'm in despair over it.
Thanks, Grant. And I agree that that does need to happen. And I wonder whether, in addition to today's recommendation is that the proceeds from any of these sales be held in a separate account until the debate and discussions around the investment paper that David's bringing us later in this year is held, so that the money doesn't just get well, it's never lost, but doesn't just find its way into the general rate account. And maybe Greg, if you just give a couple of comments, but that way, Grant, we would be able to.
I look forward to the new corporate services manager being appointed.
We could proceed with the work, but hold the money over until that decision's made. Greg, any comments? Okay, so Greg, do you need us to create a recommendation that says that for these particular properties, or for the sale of any properties between now and the paper being presented, that the sales are held in a separate account? Just wondering what wording's required to enact that sort of decision. Douglas?
Your worship, the proceeds aren't going to roll in within the next 3 months. You can wait for the CEO's report to get to the table and make a cohesive one statement as opposed to doing a holding situation, I think, just to help you out with the process.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, I would endorse that. Councillor Miller's words are not lost on me in the report that's coming back, which you will note is actually due for presentation in August.
Okay, so we won't change anything then and note that that timing fits before the proceeds come in. Thanks, Douglas, for that clarification. Are there any further discussions? Deborah, you had a question on the recommendations.
Yes, I did. I had a query on B. Are there any offer back provisions that need to be undertaken with regards to the reserve going to the Department of Conservation? Are there any other interested parties that need to be consulted in the process?
No, it's not. The crown of the party we have to engage with. So there's not Ngātahu or a previous owner. Even the endowment land doesn't have that offer back where we've bought land and we have to do an offer back process. The endowment land process has its own process. So the other processes outlined in those two reports we have to follow.
Douglas, only comments from me around B is that even if we remove the reserve status, you're right, it doesn't deal with the heritage status, but the heritage status on the buildings doesn't stop us from being able to sell it. And the heritage status then becomes the property of the new owner. It's the reserve status that really challenges the sale of the property under that. And I just wonder whether the scope of the discussion with DOC couldn't be widened, because in the previous meetings we've discussed the future of the Blackberry patch, and I wonder if the reserve that sits on could not be part of this discussion too, so that building could then also be taken off our books.
No, I would just suggest to you, because that's a much larger property. It's not, that house sits on, let's see, Rob, 2 to 3 hectares.
Yep.
Because it goes right through to the Hawkins Road.
Yes.
So no, I wouldn't recommend you tie those two together. We can talk about that with the there, but no, that process, that site of land's not quite as advanced as this one here, so I wouldn't join them together. I think the reason I've deliberately just taken the first step too is just to dip the toes in the water with the Department of Conservation as well. Can I just suggest too, if the CEO is going to have a discussion with me on the Tiny Hill Drive ones, then only pass a resolution regarding the townships or Lincoln. That's not sort of bog ourselves down in the Tiny Hill ones if we're having a different view on that, unless you're thinking there are developers on all our sites are interested in something in that regard. I suppose that, yeah, the only challenge if you've got I won't say any more because that's a different process than what we've got processed planned here in terms of open market sales.
Okay, I am not, as a council, I think we still want to be able to follow your recommendation around the sale of property through real estate agents and identifying if they're in Rolleston, then a Rolleston real estate agent selling them, I think makes sense. And if they were in Leaston, would go Leaston, and if they're in Darfield, would be going Darfield. So having both Lincoln and Rolleston here, I think is good, regardless of what this other conversation is going to be. Sounds like, Jeff, you've been having some discussions that the rest of the councillors won't be aware of, and this has been a work stream that's been a number of years to get to where we are now, and has always been heading towards the sale of these properties. So I don't see a dramatic change from that. We haven't made any decisions to become social housing providers, although we have said that we would like to maybe work with social housing providers where our land could be used to give us a return, so that it's not just sitting there. So I'm not seeing what we're deciding today departing from previous discussions, and unless you've got some further views around a change from what's proposed, that might just help us out today.
Yeah, no, I have no interest in these properties whatsoever, and I understand the council's following a process. But what I am saying is that at some stage we have to stop talking about social housing and affordable housing and all these other things and put our foot down and say, where do we stand? Do we want it? Yes or no? In the past, it's been no, but we tend to be getting pushed in that direction. And certainly, having reflected on, and I'm sure all of you around the table have had some of these letters from the Selwyn Huts, that makes you aware that there are people in our community who really suffer in this financial climate. It's all very well sitting around this table and say, let's just sell this and let's sell that, and we'll make a little bit of money. I think that there has to come a stage when we reflect really seriously about social housing, looking after the people that are a little bit more vulnerable in our community. And perhaps if we have got empty sections at this stage, maybe it's a good time. What better time is it to reflect on these things when we actually have the assets here before we sell them? It may well be that after the discussion that we have in August or whenever it is that we decide that here to sell them. But let's have that discussion at some stage, a logical discussion with a workshop and input from our council staff.
Thank you, Councillor.
And the meeting that Councillor Bland is referring to is scheduled to be the council briefing meeting in the first week of August that we'll be discussing this matter.
Okay, so the recommendations can stay as they are and they won't compromise that. Douglas, I take your point about not linking the two items in Hororata together, but I'm suggesting that maybe there's a 1 and a 2 to an agenda item if you're having discussions with the Crown about land, that also at least be brought to their attention, that the future of that site could be something that we would like to discuss. They're not linked other than their locations together, and if they're looking at a map, you can point out where that is. Great. A mover for A, B and C. Councillor Miller, and seconder, Councillor Lemon. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, declare it carried. That takes us to the end of the public portion of this meeting. Thanks to those that are at home watching along. It's nice to be able to stream this to you, and for the reporters and public that we've had here today. A resolution to move into public excluded, moved Councillor Hassan and Epiha. All those in favour, please say aye.